The Me&Him podcast. Well, here we are again back at the Me&Him podcast, but it's a different Me&Him today. It's not me and Dad with a special guest. It's me and a man I've been wanting to meet for so long called Benny Cudmore. He's on the line right now. How are you, Benny?
G'day, Jason. Pleasure to be here, mate. And we finally got this happening.
We finally got it happening. I've heard your name everywhere, over the last year or so. It's funny, when I started doing the podcast, and I was talking to people at work about it, and they're like, "Oh, have you heard of Self-Seen?" And then your name came up. I'm like, "Oh, I've got to investigate that." And then obviously I saw more and more and more and joined the group. And then we started talking, and after a few false starts, we made it here.
Yes, exactly, mate. And mate, honestly, it's been a journey. It's been fantastic, and it's good to see that Self-Seen's getting out there, and that's what we're all about. That's why we pump it as much as we can, because we want men to have somewhere to go, a safe space to come and have a chat if they need it, a place of connection, a place of support, encouraging, and ultimately just grow. So it's awesome that the name's getting out there.
Oh, it is, and we're going to get into all of that, because I'm interested to learn more. We've had a couple of brief chats, but we haven't really talked in much detail about necessarily how you started, what you do, what you've seen, and ideally what I'd love to do, and I guess part of my mission on this podcast is to highlight strategies and lessons learned that one person can pick up and that can make a difference.
Beautiful, mate. And that's the reason why we started Self-Seen. We started the Self-Seen as a mission to help one person, just that one person, and that just helped us grow, And we did help that one person, then we helped that next one person, and then now we're just this established organisation that's got 3 locations around Australia, and we're looking, so good. It's absolutely amazing, guys.
Mate, that's good. Now, before we go too much further, I will explain to anyone's listening. My father, Matt, he's usually on this call, and we almost had him here, but he had a bit of a spill over the weekend, and he's sort of taking care of himself and taking care of his business right now. So, I figured I wanted this conversation to happen. I know he wanted to be here, so he sends his apologies. But I think you and I both realize that, self-care is sort of number one. You fit your own oxygen mask, and then you can sort of help others, right?
Absolutely, mate. Put yourself first, and everything will flow from that.
Yeah. Well, just while we're sort of setting the scene, I guess, I want to talk to you about so much, right? So I want to sort of start. We've mentioned Self-Seen. So what exactly is it? What do you guys do? I've seen the ice baths and stuff, which I sort of yet to do, to be honest. I mean, I jump into the cold water occasionally, but nothing on that level. But yeah, what is Self-Seen, and, what sort of things do you do?
Mate, Self-Seen, we do many things, right? So ultimately, we're trying to normalise men growing, and we're trying to normalise men having an open mind to growth and to trying new things to see what will work for them. So we started off just wanting to run a weekly men's walk, and we established that. They went fantastic, and we're like, what else can we do? And we started running men's workshops, which is giving tools for men to use. So we get men, obviously, in the local area that aren't really ready for this sort of work, or aren't really got their mask up, or very attached to their ego. So to normalise that for them to come into the space, to have an open mind and to learn these new tools to use has been difficult. But over the years, we're slowly getting there. At the very start, very, very hard to get these men in, because we're even when I first heard about breathwork, I was like, oh, that sounds super weird, man.
Super spiritual.
I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And it was just that taboo subject. Like, until I tried it, I was like, nah. Then we do journaling. We have a men's circle, which is very private, awesome space for men to be able to unpack what they've got going on. Like, it's an amazing experience. And obviously, many other things we do in our workshops, including ice baths. So these are the sorts of things we're trying to give a holistic approach to mental health. Obviously, if you need therapy, if you need medication, that's fine. But we're trying to have that other approach where we're filling the gap from the people falling through the cracks from the hospital system, from people that don't not feeling safe to talk in front of, whether it be their friends, family, partner. They don't want to burden them with their problems. We're filling that gap. We're meeting every single week, 3 times a week. We've got a run club now. We have a men's circle every week. We have our quarterly, like I just said, workshops. And it's all about this constant connection, constant growth, constant support, which is the key. And the best part, Jace, what we're seeing is that these men are coming through, they're doing our programs, they're showing up, they're getting off the piss. They're getting off, minimising their drug intake. They're doing these healthy things for themselves, creating these healthy habits in their life just by laying that one brick at a time, one step at a time, moving forward. And now they're leading our space. So the programs come full circle.
They're finding their power.
Oh, mate, and it's purpose in life, and it's like, well, I'm giving back now. And then, well, what else can I do, sort of thing. And it's just like trying this next step. Like we've got amazing stories within our group and amazing.
So it's like you've paved a path, and blood, sweat, and tears. Got one guy to walk down it with, behind you or with you, beside you maybe, and then that path. Then other people have started to follow and started to say, hey, we could build a big highway here. Let's make more room for others and muck in.
Yeah. And mate, we did it organically. So like we started off with a walk, like I said, just back in 2020, we started this. We had 4 blokes come along, and 3 of them were the blokes who started, the co-founders. So we just started off like that, and we're there every week. I was doing that walk anyway, 6 a.m. walk. It was an hour walk. I walked to Lighthouse Beach and back, something healthy on a Sunday morning. I was 2 years drug free from then. So that was my morning walk, and that was my routine on every Sunday. So I was like, well, let's bring other men to come along too. And then it's just grown organically, mate. We've got a hub now, so we're lucky enough to have the community behind us. We've got an amazing community in Port Macquarie, local businesses supporting us, and they've helped us fund to get a hub. So we've actually bought an old gym, turned it into a holistic men's hub. We've got a private men's group up, mezzanine level upstairs that's fully getting enclosed at the moment, soundproof. So what he's actually said in that room stays in that room, and it's the most powerful. If you ever get the opportunity to sit in a men's circle, you'll understand that the beauty and the courage that's shared, the vulnerability that's shared, it's vulnerability in safe spaces equals healing. And obviously the opposite to that is, trauma. So in this safe space, they might not have that place to go to. And we've got this talking stick. So the men come in the room, we lay down the rules, we lay down how it's going to work, because we might have 2 or 3 new guys. So we lay down exactly what's expected. Obviously, once you walk out that room, nothing is from that room has been said when you leave. When you have that talking stick, you've got the room. No one's butting in for you. You've got the room, and it's so powerful, mate. And to have this hub, we're encouraging exercise now. We've just got government grants for ice baths and saunas in there as well. So we're trying to really create this whole approach to mental health, exercise. The ice baths and saunas pretty much, mate, I've got one at home, eliminates anxiety. Like, it's just like going for a run if you don't have time, I've
seen some of the stats actually on the ice baths, and, they compared to the sustained dopamine release that you get over time. It's quite incredible. And in fact, just on that subject, I was watching a reel, I think it was Diary CEO or something the other day, and they talked, the expert there talked about just when your body reacts to cold and what it does to open up it brings all the blood closer to your inner organs. And when it gets hot again, it pushes it all back out. It kind of is like a clearing mechanism also for your system. So there's a lot of health benefits that are totally scientifically proven, aren't there?
Absolutely, mate. But the best part is it's hard. It never gets easier. But when you get in it and get out,
putting me off now.
No, but mate, honestly, it doesn't get easier. But life's hard. This is what I say to the boys. Like down on the Sunday, we do ice baths the last Sunday of the month down the beach. The sun rise, and like you can't fit a better ice bath in. Like it is absolutely awesome, especially other guys helping you out, get in and out, supporting you, getting you through the seconds. We've got 10 seconds to go, or I'm going to do 3 minutes.
Which is how we meant to go, right? We've always, millennia, we've been doing that. And we've somehow in the last 100 years or so, a couple 100 years maybe, kind of all fractured. And it's all about us. It's all about the individual, not the collective. For
sure, mate. Absolutely. And I think that's where men's work's getting it back, Like I brought it before with probably going a bit off subject here, but like when I was using drugs.
Well, actually, I wanted just on that. That was my next question. You mentioned when you're off the drugs. I'm interested in hearing a little bit about that and how the relationship, how that maybe led to where you are now. Is that sort of the pivot point for you? You needed to do the stuff to sort of relinquish that addiction, or you don't have to give up too much personal info here, but I've seen a couple of your posts, and
I'm an open book when it comes to it, mate. The world knows my story.
Well, how bad did it get?
The Me&Him podcast.
I was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was smoking meth. I could smoke up to 8 ball a day. Like if I had the money, that's what I'd be using. If I didn't, I'd use what I had. If I didn't have any, I wouldn't go to work. I'd sleep until my phone would ting, and then that'd be the dealer, straight to the dealer's house. That was my life for a period of time. I had a wife who was supporting me that had no idea about it. I was a scumbag, just lying, and it come to a head, mate. I had a 9-month daughter at home to pop in my firstborn. Katie was pregnant with my second, and I'd just gone bankrupt. I'd pushed my whole family, my friends away. Katie kicked me out. I had to sell. I was running a successful
floor
business.
Disappeared.
Everything, mate. Like I had 2 tradesmen working for me, 2 apprentices working for me. I was running a successful business, what that looked like from the outside anyway at that time. But before that, it was getting there, you know. And I pretty much just dug the hole, and I was just about to go line it after bankruptcy, and like I attempted suicide. I had enough, mate, and life was terrible. Like at that point, like I had no hope whatsoever. The key to this, though, mate, is that I had no one to reach out to. I didn't think I had anyone to reach out to. Yeah. That door was closed for me because I had burnt every bridge. I'd pissed everyone off, excuse my language, and everyone was off.
Oh, mate, swear away. That's fine.
Yeah. So it was at that point where I was like, even I was borrowing that much money and bringing that many people. I only called them when I wanted something. So I don't blame anyone for not answering the phone call when I tried to call them. You know? And I was sitting in my car that morning. Like I'd just gone bankrupt. They've repossessed my $60,000 Ranger, which that was my only thing from the outside looking in that I was going okay. So I had this $2,000, you know, ute that was just a bomb. So I was so embarrassed. My guilt, my shame was just horrendous. Like it was the lowest point of my life. Luckily,
how long ago was this?
That was 2018.
18, okay, great.
So beginning of like it was like it was
pre-COVID. Then.
It was just yeah. So it was somewhere between I'd give up the drug somewhere between Christmas and New Year's, and then because the come down was just tired and paranoia and just wanting to get back on and not thinking straight. Like the 2 weeks after that was just like and then I was done. I was sitting in the ute and I planned it out and I was finished.
Wow.
But luckily I didn't, mate. I got out the other side of that. I had, you know, it was very, very, mate, within seconds, to tell you the truth. It was a pivotal moment for my life. And because I knew when I was sitting in that car screaming and crying after that event, that I wasn't going back to my old life. I knew that was it. Like everything was laid out on the table for me. Like I'd been pushed out. I had to rebuild my life. So I remember ringing my wife and said, look, I need to come home. And I think she heard me properly for the first time in a long time. That I was being honest.
The beginnings of the new Benny. There's an expression that comes to mind that, just from what you're saying there, that we only change when the pain of changing becomes less than the pain of not changing. You know, so you know, you have to. You can't stay in that state anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly right, mate. And I think at that particular time I was finally ready. You know, I'd tried to give up hundreds of times, but it wasn't until that, you know, the lowest point of my life where I had to change and I was ready for change. I think being ready is the key word in that. And that's when I rang my partner, like I said, and I just said, I have to come home. I was ready. She heard me. And I was lucky enough to be invited back home. And from that point on, I actually remember walking through the front door. At the time I mentioned that I'd gone bankrupt. So I walked in the door. We're staying at my mother-in-law's house because we're completely broke. So we moved back in there. And I walked in the front door and she's gone, are you okay? And I was, you know, obviously just had a massive, you know, traumatic experience. And I just said, yeah, I just nearly crashed my car. It's all, I'm just going to go to sleep. And I just went and slept for, you know, 12 hours straight. And then from that point, I just started working on myself. Started eliminating everyone in my life who was negative, who was toxic, who was bringing me down, who would ring me up to tell me they're on again, to bring me back into that cycle. So I blocked, deleted, and
because they need you, right? Because you help enable them.
It's a two-way street, mate. Because we're both toxic, and you know, and it's just like this little culture that you're in, and the language you talk, the things you do, the sneaking around, the normalised like behaviour between us, and the language we use. It's terrible, mate. Like but it was so real, and so, you know, it wasn't me, but it was just that feeling that I needed to forget all the stuff I had going on in my life, all the stuff I did to myself, my past, the stuff I was masking. Like I just needed that good feeling because it was the best feeling in the world, because I had no tools to use at that time, you know, so I used something that felt good, and in doing that I destroyed my life and people around me.
Wow.
But like I said, mate, the things I did was, you know, obviously the first thing I did was block and delete and just stuck to my family, my little circle.
So step number one, remove the influences.
Yep. I gave myself no opportunity to go back into it from any external force. It was just what was happening in here, and at the start it was you know, it was the first couple of weeks was easy. Like, it was hard, don't get me wrong, but it was like the willpower was there, and I'm like, I'm not going back there. I'm starting to feel better again, you know. But it was the months after that where I really needed the discipline. Like it was really, really hard to be in my head at that time, and to try to just to go to work and make money. Like it was just, and the embarrassment of just, knowing what people knew about me, and to show up in a small country town.
Sounds like you were kind of stripped bare, like totally exposed at that point.
I did, mate. And honestly, with that, it really helped me grow as a man. It helped me become a better person. How hard it was, like being stripped down to that, and then you have to be accountable over time. You have to start living with integrity again, and you have to start being a father and showing up as a dad instead of just letting my wife do it for the first 9 months of her life. Like it was. I started to learn what it was, life was all about then, and I started to hear different things because I was stuck in addiction for so long. And then I found exercise. I found lifting weights. I ran into a mate, and he rang me up and he said, "Mate, what's going on?" He must have heard a few stories along the grapevine, and I said, "Oh no, all good, mate." And he goes, "Well, come down and have a train with me." He had a strongman set up in his garage. He was the under 18 Australian champion of strongman, under 80 kilos. So. Right. Absolute lunatic of a bloke, but one of the best blokes you'd ever meet, and exactly who I needed at that time. So the only person I was, apart from my family, talking to was him. And every night I'd live probably 2 k's up the road. I'd run down to his house after the kids were asleep and train with him, and then I'd run home again. And I wouldn't get home till 11 p.m, but I didn't care. It was and I started getting stronger. I started building muscle. I trained for a comp. Like the only reason why I didn't do the strongman comp, it was just a novice comp, was because Lucy was born that weekend, so I couldn't do it. But mate, I'll tell you, I worked that hard for it that I wasn't going to get beat. As arrogant as it sounds, I was that focused, but I'd already won. Like in my mind, it wasn't about the competition; it was about the journey to get to the competition. And then now I'm get to be a dad again, and then I get to have a new journey. But also, it was a system I had in place as well by consistently going to the gym, a good routine, something that I'd never had before. And that gave me that, life back again. And, it was just like that same old saying, brick by brick. And then things happen. And, buddy, 7 years later, here we are.
And here we are. Well, you mentioned about vulnerability earlier, and man, you've just demonstrated some of it right there. The fact that you hit such a low, and then, through really necessity and I guess this internal fire or whatever, to sort of go, I'm not ever doing this again, and started to slowly build yourself back up, is a testament to your motivation, I guess, and your purpose, which is obviously important for us blokes, right? We need to have something that's bigger than ourselves if we're going to be kind of happy. And then what's happened, obviously, is, as you mentioned at the intro, you've other people, one person walked with you, and then others, and then now you've got other people, as an organization, which is incredible. I mean, I'm so looking forward to seeing, how this thrives and want to be associated in some degree with it as you go. But before that, like, You've now got to a point where you've not only, by the sounds of things, found a good balance and harmony in your life, helping others, disciplining yourself in different ways, and we can all learn something from that. I'm interested in sort of the people that come to you, like the people that are attracted. Obviously, they're the people you talked about before, falling through the cracks, maybe. But is there a type, or is it a mixture of everyone? Is it young and old? What is it? What do you see there in terms of the need and the people, that really benefit from the work that you guys do?
Mate, over the past 4 years of doing self-seen and putting myself out there in the community, and obviously being well established now, mate, from young men from 14 to old men around 70, and everyone in between.
Wow.
Mate, honestly, we've held men's circles for young men. We had a young guy, actually had Lifeline reach out to us on behalf of a young man who tried to take his own life. They had 12 of his friends in the Lifeline office, and him as well, having a chat about mental health and how they can support their friend after he just had that experience.
Oh, that's lovely.
They reached out to us, and we held a men's circle for them. They were young men, and I can't remember their age, but they were proper young, like they were
teenagers,
16, 17.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's amazing, just to have that space for these young gentlemen, just as friends, to let them unpack what they're. Because
you've got the social media, you've got all these other things. Everyone. There's so much anxiety around. Isn't part of that, Benny, because of the breakdown of community, outside of the whole role of social media and image and all that stuff. It really, you talked about you got 17 to 70-year-olds or whatever, 16 to 70-year-olds. That's how we used to be, isn't it? Back in the day, where you could talk to the old man at the end of the street, or your grandpa or your uncle, or guys would
Honestly,
hang
I think
out.
it depends because a lot of that would have been about your emotions and traumas and things like that.
It's more working side by side, maybe.
Well, these guys are talking about being abused as children, or all sorts of stuff, mate.
You need a confidential space for that.
Yeah, but also we're self-seen is 18 plus. That was a special circle that we had. That was we don't necessarily we help parents out to get their kids into the support that they need. But as an organisation, we are 18 plus. So, but this is the issue, mate. Where we've seen from the oldest all the way all the way down. It's like we're passing this trauma down. We're passing this men's mentality that we can't talk and we can't be open because if you talk, you're weak. And that's everyone's saying it's not worth to speak. But at the end of the day, the problem is with men, I believe now, is that we've come a full circle. We know we need to talk. Everyone's saying you need to talk. They've got partners telling them they should talk.
Yeah.
Where do they talk? That's the issue. Because if you don't have a safe space, if you don't have a safe space for vulnerability, then that's going to, if they're talking to the wrong people, they're going to get the wrong advice. They're going to get people talking behind their backs, and that's going to bring on trauma. Then when that happens, and if it does happen, which majority of the time it does if they talk in the wrong space, then they're going to just shut up. And then everything they just keep inside will just,
bottle it up.
Bottle it up, and that weight gets heavy. And that's men's suicide is not going down at the moment. And there's more money than ever in mental health. Across the board in men, women, Aboriginal. There's money everywhere for it at the moment.
Yeah, and I think drug use is still going up. So it's not like we're throwing a lot at it. It's not really being solved.
Well, that's right, mate. And I think we're not getting the root cause of a lot of issues either. And that's the problem. It's a massive issue, but I think the first point of call is we need to have that safe space to talk. We need to have families, we need to have brothers, we need to have friends to have that conversation, or to know that, don't judge, don't tell them what they shouldn't do. Close your mouth and just frigging listen to them. Let them talk.
Isn't that a hard thing? You must see this a lot, because this came out of a conversation I'm having at the moment just with regard to work. To be able to give someone a few seconds, to listen to it. And guys want to fix stuff, right? So we want to, you should do this. I did this when, and you either steal the focus and make it about yourself, or you just throw stuff at them and kind of almost shut them down before they've got to what's really important. How you say you run the men's circle. How hard is it to? How do you find people adjust to that? Obviously got the talking stick you mentioned, right? Just to learn to listen, because I don't think it comes naturally to a lot of blokes.
Mate, it doesn't, and I think that the talking stick was absolutely pivotal for us.
Game
because we had guys jumping in left, right, and centre. We're facilitating. We're going, nah, you'll get your chance to talk. Wow. We're not here to give advice. Not here to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. We don't give advice in men's circles unless it's asked for. And then it's only taken with if you want to receive it or not. And we say that if you want to ask for advice, then and you don't like the advice, we'll just put it in the bin because you asked for it, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, mate, that talking stick's key, especially in these spaces. When we're having our weekly barbecues and our walk up the beach, there's going to be banter, there's going to be back and forth. But in saying that too, that's not really a lot of the time to talk about your deep issues either. That's just a chance for connection, and us men need that connection.
We need that too.
100%, mate. We need it. Women do it naturally, and they talk, and they, and that's
mothers groups and school communities, thing. And
just friends. They call up, and it's I believe it got lost a little bit during COVID, and that period of time. But I believe it's they've got that knack to just naturally talk. Where blokes talk by putting shit on each other and having that banter, which is great. But I think we need to have that, making sure that we are okay in a sense, to make sure that on a deeper level that we're not going home just going, closing that door, and then your mask comes off, and then you're really, feeling the pain and sitting in it, which, sitting in your pain is important. It's important to know that, you can get through that by not using drugs and everything else, but you need to talk about it, and we need to unpack it. We need to find out what the root cause of why we're feeling depressed, why the anxiety is there, why we're constantly getting burnout, because it just becomes a cycle, which what we see.
I realised for some of my issues back in the day, and I'm a work in progress like us all, right? And I realised I wasn't necessarily a drug addict or anything. I smoked a bit of pot, and whatever. I had a few drinks. But I realized that where it showed up for me was in relationships, right? Where when I grew up, I didn't have a father figure around. This is one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast. My dad, right? Because we're close now, and we've been close for decades. But at that time, in the formative age of my life, I didn't have a male role model, so I didn't learn what it was like to be a man. I didn't have the guardrails. The friends were all kind of idiots to some degree. They were great, fun, but not good influences necessarily. I kind of relate to what you're talking about. But I learnt that I actually had become codependent on females, and I had I accidentally kind of tainted my relationships because my needs were so strong to sort of have this sense of safety and comfort and all this sort of stuff. I didn't know how to necessarily stand on my own 2 feet and draw my boundaries, and as you said, speak to someone about the stuff that's really important. So I ended up at one point, and I ended up in a group called Codependence Anonymous, which was a blokes group. And man, I learned a lot from that. That was the root cause. Wasn't a lot of the people came from AA and Narcotics Anonymous and everything to Codependence Anonymous because they realized that they were treating the symptoms, not the cause. They'd become that way. So I can really relate what you're saying. You got to get right under the hood and work out where's this coming from.
Absolutely, mate. And that's a journey on its own. It took me a long time to work out exactly what it was. In doing that, you do the work in between that. You do whatever works for you. You do the positive things that you need to do in your life and be consistent with that. And eventually you get the right aha moment and that light bulb moment. You're like, that's where all my traumas come from. And that's why I was showing up the way I was showing up. Yep. Not like it was to blame that, because you got to be accountable for the way you're showing up. What you did, you got to own your story and own, and live with integrity and, really own it to be, to move forward from it. Because if you keep blaming and keep, pushing it aside, then you're not going to grow from it. But once you find that root cause, then you can really go, right, well, is there anything I can do about it now? And I think everyone's different. Obviously, when, you can have some pretty traumatic experiences, especially what I've heard over the past few years of sitting in men's circles. But, just on a personal level, there's nothing I can do about what happened. So all I can do is sorry, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say the psychology sort of theory nowadays is it's trawling through the past and everything and looking at your family dynamics. It's not, there's a role for it, but a lot of them now focus on what thoughts are you having today and how can you shift those thoughts? What actions are you taking today? How can you shift? Because it really is about what you're doing to move away from that. Because you're going to build those new connections, those new synaptic connections, to create new habits. So it's interesting. It used to be all about, my mum did this, my dad did this, this, and I'm not saying there's lots of reasons to say that there's validity there, but do you want to change? And if you do, what are you going to do differently today? And where do you want to be? Because you've got to start building that, right?
Oh, spot on, mate. And that's exactly right. You can get caught in that cycle of blame the victim all you want, but you're not going to get anywhere but just stuck in that same old cycle. And, at the end of the day, you've got to cut that chain to the past because, and just have that step forward because it's behind you, not in front of you. And I think we hear a lot about it these days, but if we keep living in the past, then, you're going to be, stuck there for a long time.
The Me&Him podcast.
One of the things that annoys me now, and it's only because I've had to take so much responsibility for myself over the years, and there's another term in psychology called internal versus external locus of control, right? So you're either internally your control's internal, so you say, what can I do different? What did I say that may have led to this? What do I change? Or it's external, where it's like, they did this and those are they're bastards, and it's the government's fault and this, all these other things. So if I focus the control outside of myself, I don't have to do anything because someone else is to blame, right? It's my childhood, is this and that. But if I'm like, okay, but if I take that power and go, what can I do? There's a different energy. And I think I heard that in your story where you went, right, I can, go and do a bit of exercise. Don't know how this is going to fix everything, but it's one little piece that says I got control on this.
Yeah, that's exactly right, mate. And that's just one little thing. I always say exercise won't heal you, but it's a part of the journey. It's all these little things you do that are part of the journey. And I think everyone's journey is so different. Everyone's habits and the things they need to do to heal are going to be different. There's so many things out there, but it's important to try new things and have a go. Just going back on what we were just talking about, there's this quote that sat with me when I was still sitting in the victim mentality, but still on my journey. What happened, So what happened and couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And that, it, mate, when I was sitting on the mower at work that day, like I was just like, holy moly, like Peter Crone, his name is, and I was listening to a podcast, him and Kerwin Ray, and the way he said that.
A good podcast for all that. Yeah.
Oh, mate, unbelievable. And I just like, all right, well, there's nothing I can do about that. Certain people did the best of what they knew, and that's all we can do. What am I going to do? Who needs me? Who's watching me? Who needs me in their life to look after them and to support them and provide for them? Well, that's what I need to do now. So I'm not passing the torch, you know? So that's the key.
So you mentioned just earlier, you mentioned a couple of times, I think, about vulnerability, and obviously it's hard for a guy to be vulnerable. We don't want it to come back in our face. We don't want to dump it all on our wives. And but also, you know, we don't necessarily want to share it with our mates because, you know, we like to sort of go out and have good times with them and not get too serious sometimes. How do you go about having that conversation and then from there, once you've had that conversation, how do you go about the process of starting to heal yourself, just from your experience and also what you've done in your group? Yeah,
for sure, mate. And I think just with this, like, everyone's going to be different. Obviously, people might be suffering from like heavy depression, anxiety, stress, burnout, and having that conversation is going to be very difficult, especially for the first time. So having that courage, and that's the thing we celebrate at Self-Seen, is courage, and the men that come down for the first time, because it takes so much to get out of your car and walk over to see a group of men, you know, especially in that space. Like, and that's what we say. Like, we just need to have that, you know, that 10 seconds of courage to come and open up.
So you celebrate when people rock up, do you?
Yeah, well, like, we're not jumping and,
you make a point of
something, but also, just go and introduce myself and just make sure that, you know, in when I say I celebrate, it's like we're just happy in general that someone has had that courage and leading the way for themselves in their life, because we know that they've got a story, they've probably got a family at home that he needs to get better for, and he's probably got a lot of stuff he hasn't dealt with or whatever it may be. So mate, every time someone's halfway walking over, I see him, first thing I do, shake their hand, here you go, mate. And
that's nice.
You know, sometimes it's a mask up, everything's good, mate, and then, you know, over the time they unpack, but then sometimes it's not in a good way, and it's all right, well, sometimes the group setting's not going to be okay straight away, so we might go get a seat, you know, around there's lots of bench seats around where we meet, and we just might just go and have a chat one-on-one for a little bit. Like, and that's the same as our other leaders as well. It's not just me. Like, that's the beauty about what we do. But with having that courage, I think the best thing men can do in general is know that there is help out there. Obviously, mate, it's so easy. The easy option is to shut up, don't talk, but eventually that becomes a hard option because everything's getting heavy. Wondering why, you know, you're getting angry, you're punching walls, you're having resentment against your partner, your kids.
Because the energy is coming out some way, right? It's just not a healthy way.
That's right, mate. Like, they come out in all different ways. Come out in addiction, anger, resentment, suicide, all these things comes from not talking and just that weight of the world, and obviously experiences as well, like all these traumatic experiences in our lives as well, which everyone's different. But I think if you have that one mate in your life, talk to him. Or even if it's a girl, you can talk to her, or if it's your sister, it's your brother. If you have that person in your life that you can trust, because trust is the key, and trust is, you know, not judging another person and knowing that you can tell them something, then they're not going to turn around and, you know, take that away from you, and don't make that less valid in your life and make it something else about them. Having that person is the key, and I think having that person in your life that can then encourage you to then go seek some help. Whether that help is going to your GP to get on a mental health plan, to find a psychologist, that's a wait list, but it is important to get on if that's for you. If you need that therapy, go get it, whether it's to book that, you know, that one-on-one coaching session with a men's coach, or whether it's to come and see a men's group, come for a men's walk. Find your, you know, there's lots of men's groups around Australia now. There's online Zoom men's circles every week around Australia. There's, you know, there's programs running all the time. Yeah. So it's just about putting yourself out there. And I think that's the key to finding that person, because self-seen is not going to be for everyone. I'm not going to be for everyone. You know, we have to understand that we're not going to be there. Like, we're not going to be that person for everyone, but they're going to have that someone in there, like someone. So it's just the key to find that person.
So you might have to try a couple of different things to see what clicks.
Absolutely, mate. Like, I tried psychology. I didn't like psychology, but I love men's work. So I did. I've done Mankind Project Weekend away. I've done a 44-day Habit Accelerator course under a men's coach. I've done some one-on-one coaching under him as well. I've done a 4-week Masculine Man Project last year. All these things are just these things that that may work for you, but it's important to try these things. Yes, they cost money, but if you're not trying new things to heal, to grow, to find out who you actually are, then like you're going to be stuck where you are. You're going to be stuck in this cycle. You're going to be, in that victim mentality almost still. And I think it's just so important to try these new things.
Can I just share something with you, mate? Because you've been very open with me, and
please do.
I can sense your passion and commitment here. But you've just made me think of something. Because I went to a lot of conferences, read a lot of books, they didn't have podcasts in those days, so I was just trying to do the research and go, what's wrong with, I knew something wasn't right. I knew I wasn't kind of happy, I wasn't integrated, struggling, everything was hard. It's like I was just locked on the wrong track. And I didn't know why, it's disappointing, right? Anyway, long story short, my wife left me. Right, at one point, not because necessarily I was down in the bottom, rock bottom like yourself, just because who I was, she didn't want to be around me anymore, or potentially, there was better prospects. I don't know, but either way, I was left in a house that we'd built together, and my daughter went with her, and I remember sitting in my car in the garage with my key on the ignition, thinking this is the way I'm going to do it. Right? I thinking that this is how I'm going to. If I was crying my eyes out, just inconsolable, and I put one message on Facebook. I had my phone in my hand. I put one message up saying I'm not okay, and then I sat there just bawling for a bit, and then I saw it, and I deleted it again, and then a guy messages me, who an indirect friend of mine through Facebook, and then he didn't hear back, and then he messaged again, said, I'm going to call you, give me your number, and I barely had the sort of the wherewithal to put my number in, well, maybe he called me on Messenger, I can't remember, but oh my God, man, he came to me and started talking about, he just listened, but to be honest, listened for an hour or two, and then he recommended a book called No More Than Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know if you've ever heard or read of that. Incredible book. And the gist of it was all around be bringing men back into your life. Like, I'd done all this research. I knew all this stuff, and I had all these ways of neuro-linguistic programming and this and that. I had all the theory. Didn't make a fucking difference. I was still in the same place. I knew a lot more. And it wasn't until I pivoted and realized, where are all the men in my life? That's why I got no legs now. Like, I had nothing when she left. She was everything. I told her all my stuff, and that's probably half the reason she left, right? And that was my beginning of the rebuilding, going, oh my God, I've let go of all my friendships. Haven't invested into other men. I haven't, so I'm so with you where you're at, because I learned that one of the hardest possible ways in a very similar situation to what you just described. And I'm around, okay, I'm going to now invest into other men and build a community around myself, because if I don't do that, I can't be good for the next woman in my life, or even for myself, right? So I didn't plan on sharing that, but I totally resonate where you're at, and I imagine my story isn't overly uncommon from what you've seen.
Mate, it's very, very, very common. I would say upwards of 80% of our guys are struggling with relationship breakdown, and then they've gone for that whole experience of, some might not be able to see their kids, or for whatever they've gone through, and going to the court system and all the rest of it like that. Them guys are really deep in trauma as well, and obviously suicidal, and that's where we're feeling the cracks for.
I never thought I'd get there, by the way. I thought I was stronger than that. It was a wake up.
And mate, honestly, I believe we need these moments in our life to change. I believe rock bottom's a good thing. One thing I heard in a talk I did not long ago, it was never steal. It was a drug talk at the library actually, and never steal someone's rock bottom. And I was like, wow, because drug talk about families and stuff like that.
Never heard that.
It's so important though, because like so many people will just give you money to get yourself out of situations or whatever, or tell you what you're doing is okay. But this is the key about men's work as well. Like, it's, you can talk and not receive any advice, but it gets to the point where you listen to other people's stories, and it gives you a life perspective when you hear other ones, what they're going through, and if it's similar to yours, and God, it might be that light bulb moment to go, oh righto, the way I'm showing up is not okay, and then that accountability starts showing up. That's when the growth starts. That's when they're like, oh, okay, shit, I need to that light bulb's going off. I didn't show up then, but what can I do now? Well, moving forward, this is how I've got to show up better for my family.
Right.
For my ex-partner and everything, and whatever it might be. Like everyone's story is different, mate. But yeah, it's the stuff they're going through. Yeah.
Yeah, the rebuilding of one's sense of self, and I hadn't realised till that point that I hadn't, to be stable in your world. It isn't just you got a house and you got a job and you got a partner or whatever. It's also you've got some good male friends. You've got some community outreach where you're helping some people out. You've got some exercise programs that you're doing just for yourself, where you go fishing. I didn't have all those pillars down, so that it was almost like that three-legged stool. One of the legs went, everything fell over.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And it's so important to have them pillars. It's so important to have your children, the love you give them, but then your time, so you can rebuild your self-worth and your and whether that's exercise or fishing or going on your kayak or doing that fun thing that you enjoy.
Surfing.
We need that surfing. The list goes on. Go and kick the footy or whatever it may be. Like I'm into running now. Like I love running. Like I'm in that stage of my life where I'm just non-stop running.
I've got to get back there, but yeah.
It's so important to have these pillars up and not give 100% to one, and so we can give an even amount of to a degree. Obviously, nothing's and nothing's perfect, but I think finding that it all starts from vulnerability. It all starts from talking. It all starts from working out who you are, who you want to be, and also who you don't want to be. And I think that's the key, And I think by talking, you find out way more about yourself than anything, and then that's where the growth really starts. But it starts from that initial conversation with someone you can trust.
Wow.
The Me&Him podcast.
So, Benny, you mentioned just in passing about breath work. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that shows up and the work you do around that in your group?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, obviously, we find a lot of our guys are holding on to a lot of past trauma, guilt, shame, fears, as we spoke about earlier, resentment, all the rest of it, all the emotions. And I think, and all the things, that they're just trapped inside of us. And I think we found an amazing way to release that in breath work. When you have a deep, whether it be holotropic or just long periods of breathing consistently, in, out, you have this amazing feeling, and then these emotions start shifting in your body. I've stayed in many of men's groups and men's workshops. I've facilitated breath work. I've done breath work, and it's the shifts I've seen, whether it be shaking, screaming, crying, laughing.
Wow.
Had blokes
opens the channel.
Everyone's experience is different, and I think everyone's experience every time they do it is different as well. But ultimately, when you go deep, when you have that breakthrough session, it's that release that you need. It's that stuff you're holding on to that you may not talked about, that you may not even know about. But it's that amazing release, because everyone that I've spoke to and sat in with and facilitated after have felt so much better, felt that weight lifted off their shoulders. And I think the key to breathwork is not just having this amazing session and this release and then going back into shitty habits and that shitty cycle. I think the key to it is understanding the beauty of consistency, but also understanding the beauty of the breath and understanding that we highly anxious and mouth breathing and when you're mouth breathing and not breathing fast all the time, that's going to bring on anxiety and stress and ultimately burnout, and you don't know what's going on. Where if we can slow the situation down when you're stressed or when something has happened to you in the street or at home, when the kids are stressing you out, you might be having a blue with missus or work's shit, and you just
financial pressure,
everything. And I think the key to what we're doing is just having less breaths per minute by breathing through your nose. So the slower you breathe through your nose and out through your nose, in through your nose, out through your nose. So the two quickest ways to relax and to de-stress is...
Oh, good. I want a strategy. Yes.
Yes. So this is ultimately the quickest way you can possibly do it. Best thing you can do is eliminate yourself out of a stressful situation, whether it be the kids. So we'll say the kids are fighting and you just need to get away for a minute just to get yourself back so you don't blow up. So get yourself into a room and it's just a double intake through the nose and then out, and then a double intake through the nose. So I'll just demonstrate. So it's a... So if you can do that 5 times.
Double intake through the nose and out through the mouth?
Yep. So it's a double intake through the nose, and then it's a sigh. So it's like a...
sigh.
So it's been proven that is the quickest way to de-stress, yourself.
How many did you say? 5?
You can do 5, you can do 3. Like in saying that, it depends on how much time you have. It's like if you've got 30 seconds, or it just depends. The ultimate thing, if you can do that for a minute or 2, and you can just slow it right down, so you don't have to do it quick. It's just it's all about slowing your breath down. The less breaths per minute, the more relaxed you'll be, the less anxious you'll be, the less stressed you'll be. That's what it's all about. Then there's another breath you can do, which is a 5 intake through the nose and a 5 exhale through the nose. That's 5 breaths per minute. So it's a...
So he's counting 5 for those who are listening, and then out for 5.
And out for 5. And if you do that for a minute, and then just try to ultimately catch yourself throughout the day by, when you're in the car, just close your mouth and just slowly breathe through your nose. I'm getting to the point now where I'm running and doing my 5K, and I'm doing, say, maybe 1.5 to 2K of that with my mouth closed. So I'm trying to do nasal breathing because it has so much good benefits for you. By obviously
I've actually heard of people promoting running and breathing through your nose while you run. There's something about the way the air passes through those channels that it kind of cools and everything, and it's absorbed better. But I've tried doing it. It's not easy.
Mate, it's not easy. And honestly, the people that do it have been doing it for years, and it takes time, just like anything does. But I think that for the everyday Joe Blow, and the men and women out there, and to teach their kids the importance of just slowing your breathing down through your nose and de-stressing that way, keeping it simple. Like, you don't go into too much detail, but just say, look, the best way you can de-stress, like everyone's like, go take a breath. Well, like, how do I do that? Well, just do a double intake through the nose and exhale through the mouth, and do that a few times.
That is so simple. And what sort of, you say you've seen the different reactions and what have you, but what sort of impact does that have in general that you've noticed across your group? Obviously, it's a standard part of your kind of offering and curriculum, yeah?
Yeah, well, like we've so the breathwork side of things. So obviously, breathwork's still got that taboo subject, and what we do with our men is we use everyday language. So we're not trying to, we don't want to go all in on these guys when they show up on our Sundays, on their casual Sundays, where they're going to get scared away. So exactly, like we use their language. We use the language that I use. Like the camaraderie is just like a brotherhood. Like I played footy my whole life, and I was a tradie. Like I'm trying to create that camaraderie as a group. And the last thing I want to do is, if I walked into that, years and years ago when I wasn't ready, and someone was bringing up breathwork, you got to do this. They're going to walk away from it. So there's a time and there's a place for that. And when they're buying in for a workshop, they're self-investing and buying a ticket to come into a workshop, then they're ready, and they're ready for that. But we
give me the good stuff.
Exactly, mate. But we ran a free breathwork session on the Sunrise on Sunday, and we promoted that as a breathwork. So if you don't want to do the breathwork, just come to the barbecue on the walk. But at 5:30 a.m, we're going to do some breathwork and jump in the ice baths. We had 16 men that showed up, and I think there was only 2 that had done it before. So that goes to show you where we're at, and that we're getting out there, and it's normalising behaviour to come and sit on the beach on you. Oh, and the demographic was so different. Like we had our federal member there, Pat Conahan was there. Like he come down, so it was amazing.
Nice.
And there was 7 new guys and 3 22-year-olds there. Like and an old school friend that came that I haven't seen since year 8. Amazing. Like and one of the first conversations I said is, this is the time and place to talk about, obviously, is the double intake and the exhale when you're dealing with daily stress, or just controlling your breathing through your nose, and just trying to encourage that. So we're trying to just, because I've only just got my instructor certificate in breathwork 2 months ago, so I'm only just sort of introducing.
Congratulations.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's been a that's just another.
I didn't know they had one of those things, but there we go. Learned something.
So there's Oxygen Advantage, but I do breathless expeditions. So went down to Jindabyne for 5 days and did all the pre-training online, and had an amazing retreat down in Jindabyne with a bunch of other facilitators and instructors, and learnt a lot from that. But the best part is, mate, like I'm still learning the science behind it, but at the end of the day, like I don't really personally care about the science. If people want to know about it, I want to be able to tell them about it. But personally, what it's done for me, my first experience, and every time from then, it's like, well, mate, it bloody works. So have a crack at it. If you don't like it, well, that's fine. But what's the worst that can happen? Or at the end of the day, what's the best thing that can happen? So
I think there's also an element of controlling yourself, all right? Because our minds kind of spin away, and then they kind of like we start having all these conversations in our heads, and then we sort of the emotion gets trapped. And when you sometimes just need to have something you can do that you can control, and obviously there's a benefit that it calms you and all that sort of stuff. And just it reminded me also, I went through a period where I would go outside for a walk, and I'd make sure I looked up at the sky for 10 seconds, or took my sunnies off or whatever, and just looked at the grandeur, and just to keep me level at lunchtime, go for a brief walk, look at the sky, start to notice things that are really nice around me, and just shift my mindset, and often will sort of just concentrate on a little bit of gentle breathing as I went, just to sort of get present again.
Mate, that is so important.
Because I was in my head a lot.
Oh, mate, and I think, yes, and that is the best bit of advice as well for anyone listening. Like, just to get out in nature, take your shoes off, whether it's down the beach, whether it's in the bush, whatever it may be. Having that thing for you. And I think as dads as well, I think it is so important for us to have that. It's important for us to, and this is something I learned from one of the coaches back in the day, is to take your armour off, your work armour. Like before you get out of your car, like when you're in your car, you're like, righto, I'm going inside now, I need to get in the dad mode. Whether it's doing some breathing or whether it's going down the beach for 10 minutes, take your shoes off and walk in the sand, then go home.
You kind of delineate it.
Separate work from family, and I think that's a huge factor, because they need the best of us, not the rest of us. And I think a lot of us get caught up in the stress of life, stress of work, and get home, get in the door, and crack a beer, and then the kids are like, Dad,
and you're dragging
Dad.
All the stuff from the day with you in there, aren't you? You haven't let go.
And the wife, the kids, they don't deserve that. Like they leave it at the door. And the best part, the best thing that I was taught was to take your work clothes off. Like I do disability work these days, so I'm not a tradie anymore, but I wear everyday clothes. So when I come in, I sometimes put my bluey dad shirt on that the kids got for Father's Day, so I'm in dad mode, you know what I mean? Like I have a shower and get right into that dad mode, and it's so important to leave that at the door and just to go, righto, well, that's work mode gone, and you don't get it right.
It's a great strategy.
You don't get it right every time. You don't. It's because every day is different, but it's important to get on top of it. It's important to understand it and say, right, well, it's happened, and then you can, it gets a lot easier over time, but you can't be too hard on yourself the days that you get it wrong either.
I remember, just on that, a guy used to be on the speaking circuit, I think it was Adam Fraser, he wrote a book called The Third Space, and he talks similar sort of thing, that, you've got these spaces between work and home, right? And it's usually in the car, or it might be on the bus, or it could train, or whatever, or between one thing and another. And he goes, in that middle space, the transitional point between these two different situations, he goes, the first part is to kind of reconcile, let go of what's gone on, center yourself, which is your breathing kind of exercise potentially, or maybe gratitude or whatever it might be, and then start to set your intention to the next part, the next piece that you're going into. And I thought, wow, the third space, there is no one. I was just dragging all the shit from my workday, getting home and getting more shit, and then getting frustrated. So I think he talked about it. There was also that the letterbox was like the marker that you're now in that the different space. So you've got to So anyway, that was a strategy he talked about, which I think is similar to what you're saying. Transition it.
Exactly the same. Yeah, spot on, mate. And it's a beautiful way of putting it. I like that middle space. I'm going to use that.
I've got, actually, now that I've said it, I better start practicing it again, because I just remembered it now. So Benny, look, mate, we've had an amazing chat. You're so generous with your information and your time, and I can't thank you enough for just agreeing to have a chat with me. Shame my dad couldn't be here, but I know he'll be interested to listen to this, and potentially we can follow up down the line. I wanted to just there's two things, I guess, to sort of round this up. One is, where do people find you? So people are interested in what you're doing. You mentioned you would not just in Port, but in other locations now, or what's that look like? So
we're self-seen. We operate, like I said earlier, we operate 3 times a week in Port Macquarie. And you can get onto us on Facebook and Instagram if you want to message us on Facebook, or message us on Instagram, or it's info@selfseen.com.au is our email for any questions you need answered. And we can give you any questions about other locations, which one being Bonnie Hills. So they actually have got their own Sunday meetup, Thursday meetup, as well as a monthly men's circle. Nice. So they're well established as well, run by a couple of legends down there, Rob and Greg, and they come to us to say, look, we want to start self-seen down in Bonnie Hills, is 20 minutes south of Port Macquarie, so very close, but they're there. That's it.
No one wants to drive all that way.
Exactly. Well, they were members of us, and then they started it down there because they seen the benefit.
Well, they obviously do want to drive that way.
They did. People do, but But then we had another member who was living in Port, and then he moved back to Margaret River and over in Western Australia. Yeah, and he rang us up one day and
anyone listening in Margaret River?
Yeah,
there's something going on. Self-seen.
So they've
the best to email you through that info email. At Self-Seen?
Yep. Just email it at info@selfseen.com.au and we'll answer any questions you've got.
And obviously in terms of other services out there, I've used in the past, I mean, Benny, I've made the most of the mental health care plan over the years. Yep. I've met some amazing psychologists who have allowed me to sort of get perspective on things. So you can reach out to your GP. I've also rung Beyond Blue before, especially when I was going through the marriage breakdown and I needed someone to talk to, and they were amazing. Like just, I was in a tough spot and I felt better at the end of each of those calls. It's Lifeline. I think you talked about courage. If anyone's in a tough spot, you've just got to, you got to be able to sort of reach out and ask for help, right? You said before, there's lots of different levels that people come to you, and I guess anyone listening, there's lots of different situations people are in. So there's no right way to do it, but there are lots of services out there. What sort of advice do you give blokes you're speaking to if they do have more going on than maybe they feel like they're getting just from, doing a bit of a men's meeting and stuff?
For sure. And we bring this up at the end of every men's circle just in case they're triggered or if they go home doing head miles over what they've talked about. We keep it simple as well, mate. We keep it as simple as possible and say Lifeline is available 13, 11, 14. Because if you start throwing too many things out there, and most of the time we have them saved in their phones just in case, and then it's something that they can encourage someone else to do as well. Lifeline's there. The key is, mate, like you're not always going to have a good experience with Lifeline. You're not always going to have a good experience with Beyond Blue. You're not always going to have a good experience with Men's Healthline. But the key is to just go, righto, that person didn't suit me, hang up and call again. Because there's more than one person that line. They're volunteers. They're there because they've got lived experience in it, and they're there to help at the end of the day. If they're not the person to talk to, just hang up and simply try again. It's the same as your psychologist. If that first psychologist doesn't work, try again. If it doesn't work, well, try men's work. Try having one-on-one coaching. Try something different. That's what it's all about. I think for family as well, mate, I think this is one thing I wanted to get out there, and this is one thing that I've learned doing, mental health training, suicide prevention training, is families as well don't know what to do or what to say or who to refer to, especially in their moments of crisis. Obviously, Lifeline's a good one, but New South Wales Mental Health Line, which I don't have the number right now, but New South Wales Mental Health Line, just Google that. It's a 1-800 number, and they will talk you through the process on that. You tell them the situation, and then they will talk you through the process of what you should do for the particular person in your family that needs the help, what you should say, what you shouldn't say, and them sorts of things. They're run by professionals. Nice. So that's an amazing one for families as well, but Lifeline can also give that information. So, and look, they're not just suicide prevention, Lifeline. They're over the phone counsellors. They're suicide prevention, but they're also over the phone counsellors in a sense where.
I've got the number here, mate. 1-800-011-511. So I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So if you do know any more, but feel free to reach out to Self-Seen and what we've got going on, and
Wow.
The Me&Him podcast.
Mate, you're doing such good work. I'm just really honoured that you would sort of spend some time with me, and you obviously got your lovely family to get back to, so I'm going to let you do that. We've got lots of time to come, and we're going to be catching up, and I've got a book to give you as well, to say thanks for today, and hopefully, if you like it, we can pass out a few more to some of the blokes if they get some value from it. Just for the listeners, I wrote a book called The Present and the Mindful Handbook for the Everyday Guru. I've got it on Amazon. People don't tend to buy it up there. I just tend to buy 100 myself and give them away because, I want it to make a difference, and I'm not going to wait for people to buy it. So you get one for free, sir, because you've done the work. You've created the value.
Thank you, mate. I really appreciate it. It's been absolutely amazing to come on here today. So thank you.
Oh, awesome, Benny. Well, look, mate, thank you again. And anyone who's interested, Self-Seen, Port Macquarie, and just reach out, but do it for yourself, do it for your family. If you're struggling, you can't, what's it? I'm going to finish with an expression. You can't read the label when you're inside the bottle, all right?
Love it.
You can't, right? You need perspective, and that comes through other people, sometimes professionals, and sometimes just men like you who are just willing to listen. Sometimes that can work too.
Well said, brother.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Have a nice evening.
You too. See
you,
mate.
mate.
Thank you. Bye.
The Me&Him podcast.